Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. It's the Coco Nomad here, and I try to provide information and inspiration around location independent work and entrepreneurship. And today's episode is about why I switched to weekly sprints. Now, for those who don't know, a sprint is simply just a time-based period where you or a team has a set of work that you want to get done. It comes out of the Scrum Agile practices. I picked it up as a part of my career as a software developer. It's just the way that we sort of orient ourselves around getting work done. And I've adopted it for my own projects, even as an individual. Everything that I do, I track and I manage it that way. It's worked out for me. But the biggest challenge is that I was so used to working out of the 2 week sprints because that was the habit that I built in my career and on client projects, that I didn't think about whether or not it was the best way for me as an individual to move forward and do work. So it became apparent recently, because I'm working on multiple projects, that I really did need to think about maybe changing things up. I've been doing 2 week sprints, I've been doing retrospectives, and if you've listened to the podcast, you know I have tons of retrospective episodes there, and there are a couple on the YouTube channel. When I switched over and started doing YouTube as well, I did drop a couple of those audio files in as episodes or as videos here, but I wasn't getting the optimal results. I figured like I could do better. And so I decided this past week to switch to the weekly sprint. And I just wanted to talk about some of the benefits that I'm looking to gain from this and why I'm making the change. And the first one is just basically having a shorter feedback loop. Now, time boxing my work is something that I do a lot, and I don't just do it in the sprint terms. I do it during the day as well, and I'll talk about some of those techniques in some future videos, going all the way down to like a 10-minute, 30-minute segment of time boxing work, and why I think it's effective to use as a technique, from the very minimal amounts of time, the smallest time blocks, to the large time blocks in your life. But for me, I wanted the shorter feedback loop. The great thing about a feedback loop is that I can do something and then I can get some information and get the results of that action. And then I can make a decision about whether I want to continue that. And the weekly sprints allow me to do that. I can do more retrospectives. I can do more reviews. I can take stock and get more information and course correct faster. It's a lot easier than to wait 2 weeks to decide that a practice isn't really working for me and I want to do something a little bit differently. The second reason is that it encourages task breakdowns. For me, I like to get small wins, and it helps me build the confidence and competence as I'm working through things. And as things lag, if there's a long time before I get a result, things start to get a little murky for me when I'm working on something. So if moving to the weekly sprint makes me take a project, break it down into the tasks, but then break those tasks down into things that won't take any more than a week, even if it's like multiple steps and it's a longer process. Maybe I have to send something out, wait for somebody to come back, but then I can just start thinking in terms of breaking those things down, into smaller deliverables, and just add up those small wins and just keep momentum, which is the other reason why. Third reason I like this idea of going to the weekly sprint. It helps keep me consistent and I can keep momentum going. I was working on a client project this past week, and I had one of the stories that I was working on was pretty involved. And basically, we score these things on a points level based on the difficulty or how long we think it's going to take. And what I realized was that there was an opportunity to break that down into smaller deliverables. In that instance, there was no reason why I couldn't do one part of it along the way to completing the whole and having something a little smaller delivered. And that would allow me to be more consistent and keep momentum rather than dragging out and sort of waiting, having that story just sit out there uncompleted in my swim lane, in my tracking software. And other people are looking at this too. So it's just like this thing is just in progress for a lot longer. If I shorten that by making smaller tasks and having smaller sprints, then it's a lot easier for me to move these things along, and we can all see movement. And that benefits other people as well, especially people that are working with you. They don't necessarily have to wait as long to get a deliverable or something that they need. The next reason is the primary reason, actually, and that's because I work on multiple projects. I've got multiple business things going. I've got client work. I've got things like this YouTube channel. I'm still doing print on demand. I do some writing. I will be working on another YouTube channel coming up in the next quarter. So these are and I'm always having these projects going on. And the shorter sprints allow me to like maintain the momentum and the consistency, like I mentioned, but also switching between projects is really, really mentally expensive. It's like in software called a context switch in computing. It's like switching the context, jumping between those projects. And so me having these shorter windows, shorter times of work with smaller deliverables allow me to keep these things moving forward. And I can maintain like a little thread throughout the weeks. Like I keep going. I'm like, okay, I don't have to pick something up after 2 weeks. It's like, oh wait, I forgot about that because I couldn't put it in this 2 week sprint. I had to go into the next 2 week sprint. It's like now I can just make a small deliverable that I don't have to keep it in my head, but at least I still have some context when I jump into it, and it makes it a lot easier for me to just sort of pick up and keep going. The other reason that I really like this is increased accountability. I have multiple accountability partners depending on the project and depending on the thing that we're doing and our work together. Some are clients, some are just friends, and we're not necessarily even working on the same project. But I find that for me, in that accountability, having the weekly check-ins and the daily check-ins, and I'll talk about daily stand-ups at some point, allows me to have increased accountability. So now if I say I have something I'm going to deliver and my accountability partner is holding me accountable, it doesn't go 2 weeks. It's like I have to deliver something or we need to talk this thing out within that week. And so it's not delayed for 2 weeks. And then finally, the last reason is just that like the reps, the more frequent sprints, just like I was saying, the shorter feedback loops, I also get more reps. And I think of it in terms of like an exercise. I try a lot of different workflows, different tools. And by having a weekly sprint, like over the course of the year, I get 52 reps of trying to do certain things versus just 26 in the biweekly. So it's like I get more of an opportunity to ingrain certain practices. A prime example of that is actually recording these videos. I was used to making audios for my podcast and I had a process. Well, adding like things like this ring light and setting up a microphone and using tools like OBS are completely new to me. So by having weekly sprints in which I have a weekly deliverable, it's getting me into the process of recording and setup, and I'm getting better and faster as I complete these reps, and it just makes me more efficient. The more repetition. I'm sort of building that muscle memory, if you want to think of it in like sporting terms or something. So all of those reasons are the reasons why I am a fan and moving towards weekly sprints. I think it's going to help, and we'll see the results here on the channel. The projects that I'm working on, the frequency and quantity of videos that I'm able to deliver to the channel, all of these things should be byproducts or benefits of the weekly sprint change. So how do you orient your work? Comment in the section below and let me know, like, how do you orient your work? Do you work in 2 week sprints? Do you work in 1 week sprints? Do you use sprints at all? There's some benefits to it, but you may have some alternate ways. Share those as well. There might be some alternate frameworks that you use to orient your work and keep track of how you're doing in time boxing. So I'd love to hear that and hope this helps if you aren't. And I'll continue to make some videos to sort of walk you through how I do this if you are interested. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate, or listening if you're on the podcast. I really appreciate it. And if you can share as well, if it's helpful, you think it's helpful for someone else. I really want to grow this channel and help other people get work done. I know a lot of us have been thrown into remote work very recently within the past year, and it changes the dynamic and makes things a little bit more difficult. We can be disoriented from those changes, and I want to continue to talk about ways that you can manage that and be successful as a remote worker wherever you are in the world, whether you're a digital nomad or whether you're in your home country, in your home city, and you don't have any plans to leave. It doesn't really matter. The goal is to help you get better at doing the things that you want to get done. Hope this helps, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers.